You've killed me!
Good.
I won!
How's it going? Welcome back to another great video here on the Savior Show. Do try not to Splatoon into your pants right now because I know we are all very excited for this new Zelda game. So I will just quickly say this before I jump into my review of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. If you do find yourself enjoying the video, just subscribe. It takes 2 seconds to subscribe, literally a click of a button for you guys, but it means the world to me. It means so much to me, you have no idea. I put a lot of effort into my videos and I will try hard for you guys to make quality content. If you like game reviews, retrospective content on gaming stuff, philosophical videos around anything pretty much, and just me ranting about the future dystopia and technology, this channel is a mixed bag of wonders, so make sure you do stick around and subscribe.
Oh, shit! Oh, fuck!
Now, I don't want to do a long intro because I've been told that my intros are too long, and I agree, so I'm trying to work on that. So just quickly before I jump into my review of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, I just want to highlight what made Breath of the Wild so special, because this is pretty much Breath of the Wild. It's just expanded upon. So I think it's important to understand the foundation of that game and then understand why this is even better. Zelda games are special for a reason and they mean a lot to so many people. I think what makes Zelda special is because there are so many Zelda games now with such convoluted, complicated timelines. I think it like splits off into 3 separate dimensions or something at this point. No matter what type of gamer you are, I'm sure that one of the Zelda games means something to you, and that's just the special impact Zelda has. You know, it's this perfect blend of exploration, fantasy, and it's a game all about vibes more than anything. The best way to summarize Zelda without sounding like an absolute cringelord is it's basically a game about vibes. It's very difficult to capture what exactly makes Zelda so unique because there are tons of fantasy games that do dungeon crawling and stuff like that, but Zelda has a special atmosphere about it. For a lot of new people who came into the franchise later, fell in love with Breath of the Wild because it changed the formula of open world games. At the perfect point when the gaming industry was getting so stagnated, so boring, so generic, copy and pasted, Ubisoft open world design approach. You know, older games used to respect player intelligence and player agency. Just go back and play one of the old Star Wars Jedi Outcast games. Those types of games where you actually have to do problem solving yourself and not let the game play itself for you like a goddamn movie, because modern day games don't want to be games anymore. They want to be movies. They want to be cinematic, in your face, shiny, realistic graphics. It's the same thing that's happened to movies. It's become generic. It's become a formula, a roller coaster spectacle instead of creativity. So Breath of the Wild came out at such a crucial time where a lot of gamers, and some people like that type of shit, and fair enough, you know, lots of people like to eat McDonald's all day, every day, so, you know, whatever floats your boat. But what I'm saying is it came at a crucial point where a lot of people were getting so sick and tired of this formula and how the AAA gaming space were treating the audience and the gamers. So that's why Zelda Breath of the Wild was so revolutionary, because it was a game that actually respected the players, player agency. It didn't hold your hand. It was an open sandbox and in some ways an immersive sim where you have to actually figure out how you defeat Ganon. You have control over your own destiny, and that is liberating. It's a game all about questions. What's over that horizon? What is this puzzle trying to tell me? How do I figure it out? How do I get stronger as a player, as a character? All of these things you had to figure out yourself, and there was no correct way in beating the game. You could complete it naked, but, you know, by gathering a bunch of elixirs and potions, you could just buff yourself that way and defeat Ganon if you had strong enough equipment and stuff like that. So there are so many ways to complete this game, and that's why it just meant a lot to a lot of gamers. That's why now a lot of games try and replicate what Breath of the Wild is doing, which is good because that new formula is what we need in the gaming industry. So now let's just get straight into this Zelda Tears of the Kingdom game review. and I hope you enjoy. Like I said, if you do, make sure you do subscribe, leave me your thoughts down below in the comments. So the thing that makes this game even better is it just doubles down on the creativity, the player agency. Now you have so many new tools at your disposal to, engage with the world around you. And the first game was all about, trying to figure out how to get to a destination by using the physics of the world and nature. Link didn't have that many abilities at his disposal. He could just climb and traverse by himself using, nature and the physics around him, create a fire so you can fly up a mountain, stuff like that. But this game, Link feels more like a superhero because you have all of these different abilities. I guess a good analogy would be Breath of the Wild was like a Lego set, and you could, like I said, use nature to your advantage. Everything was based around the physics in the world, and that's what made it so good. Fire and water, electricity, all of this stuff actually mattered, and you could use these elements to your advantage. You could use the materials around you to do all kinds of things, from simple stuff to chopping down a tree to create a bridge, or attach a bunch of balloons to a boat to make it float, stuff like that. So if Zelda Breath of the Wild was like a Lego set, Tears of the Kingdom is like an entire box of Legos, just a whole bunch of different sets all piled into one giant box for you to play with, if that makes any sense. I'm just trying to describe to you that basically the only limit here now is your imagination, to a degree, of course, but this is probably the best video game sandbox when it comes to creativity that I've ever seen. And that's very refreshing to say, especially in a time where I feel the gaming industry is corrupt with, the big shills and big studios like IGN and all of these people, content creators who shill out games in previews and then later on double back and say it was complete trash, like in the case of Redfall, because money is exchanged, and just the standards of publishers releasing broken games and pre-orders and all of this other BS that has contaminated the gaming industry. The fact that we're getting another revolutionary game in this time is just incredible. The sense of verticality is just blown out of the water compared to the first game, and that already did an amazing job of that kind of stuff. The gameplay that it adds in the Sky Islands are also just, expanded upon. We get new puzzles, boss battles, and you will find building materials and stuff like that in the Sky Islands. So much to explore, and they all have kind of unique biomes, almost as they're kind of pulled apart from the actual open world itself. They just exist floating around in the sky, and you will find, new challenges, new puzzles, challenges, just like we got in the original Breath of the Wild, where you would get these cool challenges, like, for example, you would get pulled into an island and all of your gear would be lost, and you would have to figure out how to get off the island by just collecting and gathering all over again. Or, for example, another one is everything just goes completely pitch black and you have to figure out how to find your way out of that place by using torches and light sources at your disposal. Creative ideas like that is what makes it so special, and obviously I can't go into spoiler territory because of embargo reasons and stuff like that, but you get basically, tons of new challenges in the Sky Islands, and those unique challenges is what I found so engaging in the first game. So the fact that they've added even more is great, but a lot of the main stuff that you will be doing in the Sky Islands is simply, doing a puzzle, trying to figure out how to get from one place to another, or how to bring one item from one island over to another Sky Island, stuff like that. That makes the puzzles feel unique and fresh, and of course you can solve them in all kinds of different ways by using the new tools at your disposal. I do have to say that at times Link can feel a little bit OP now, because he feels like some kind of superhero with all of these new abilities at hand, but the way they've managed to balance out the difficulty, because if you took this Link and dropped him into Breath of the Wild, you would just demolish absolutely everything. But now what they've done to balance out the new abilities that Link has is adding new enemy types, new enemy variations. So you will get the standard enemy types, like you would in the first game, with kind of different colors and stuff like that, and they would be stronger. But now we've added different attack patterns and armor sets to the standard enemies to make them more difficult, and by using standard equipment, you won't get that far anymore in combat. That's why you have to use your new abilities. It encourages you to use the abilities at your disposal, like Fuse. I would say it does do a good job of this, but I feel the first game balanced difficulty so well, but this does feel a little bit broken because at times you can feel overpowered or underpowered. I think it is a bit annoying that it relies a lot on Fuse. You can't just use standard weapons and expect to get very far anymore. You will have to use your new abilities. And I'm going to get into some negatives, like I do with all of my reviews. If you're not aware, I'm giving you the positives and then I give you the negatives. The reason why I do the positive and negatives aspect to my reviews is because I respect you guys and your intelligence, and then you can just basically make up your own mind about if it's worth getting, depending on how many positives there are compared to the negatives, because of course gaming, like art, is always subjective. So some of the new abilities are things like I've already talked about, Fuse, which basically means you can merge any object in the game pretty much, you know, with limitations of course. You can't fuse a mountain onto your sword, but you can fuse, you know, a boulder for example onto a stick. You can fuse a rocket to your shield so you can fly away mid-combat. Fuse basically means that you can just take any material in the world and fuse it to something else, and that can be done with weapons, that can be done with materials like your cooking ingredients, and materials that weapons and materials that enemies will drop. So you can use that to basically create crazy weapons or new systems and new vehicles, although they're not exactly vehicles, new tools. You can just build and create whatever you want. It's absolutely insane. I wouldn't even call it vehicles because they're just weird little objects that you kind of cobble together to traverse the world, and it's just so cool. You can also use it to figure out puzzles. Another new ability is Ultra Hand, and this basically is how you build, and you can also use it on other objects in combat or puzzle solving, and you can just move and push things by using this massive Ultra Hand ability, basically using the Force, which is pretty cool, but you cannot use it on live enemies. But if the enemy is wearing something like a backpack or, you know, something that is an object, then you can use it to manipulate. It's just so cool because the first game was already compelling, even if after a while it kind of got boring just running around and climbing. It never felt like it got boring because, like I said, it's all around answering questions. That's what made it so good, is that curiosity that it would always just pique in you. You're no longer limited to just climbing up something and managing your stamina. You can create objects to help you fly up a mountain, or you can just use your new abilities like Ultra Hand to, you know, build a bridge, for example, to, you know, climb up something or get past a certain location. You know, it's just insane. It's literally insane. I hope I'm not overselling it, but I hope you understand just how much it opens up. I can't wait to see what players create because, you know, I'm sure they're going to create all kinds of crazy stuff. There is a limit, of course, to a degree, as how much stress you can put on the engine, and you can't completely break it. You know, there is a certain height limit and stuff like that. Another ability is Recall, in which basically you can control time and just go back. It's kind of like if you played Prince of Persia, the Dagger of Time, basically a way to just go back in time. You can't use it on Link himself, but you can use it on objects. So for example, if a big boss is chucking an explosive barrel at your face, you can use that so it reverses back into the enemy, which is very satisfying. And you can use it to get back up to the Sky Islands because the Sky Islands are collapsing, and I'm not going to get into that, but basically you can get back. Ascend is another ability that is quite useful, but I feel like this one wasn't exactly needed because it can take the tension out of combat, where you don't have to, you know, think about how to get out of a certain situation, because if you are in a situation and you have a roof above your head that you can ascend, you can basically just escape. But basically you will be using these Zonai devices to create whatever you want, and you will unlock more of them because obviously you will not have everything unlocked at the get-go. You unlock these Zonai devices by completing puzzles, by completing challenges and shrines and stuff like that, and you unlock them by these giant gacha pods pretty much. and they give you new abilities, and then that opens up new materials for you to use for building and crafting. So I think that's a great way of making it feel fresh as you progress. Just like the Korak seeds and the shrines did in the first game, after a while it did get old because they used just too much of the same assets in my opinion. What made it feel fresh were the challenges, and like I said, there is more in Tears of the Kingdom, but the way you unlock the devices are kind of in a similar vein, where there are multiple ways to do it, but basically in the end it will basically revolve around completing the same type of puzzle or something similar. But do bear in mind, when you are building, things do have their certain positions and places, so you can't completely, just create whatever the hell you want. It does have to kind of connect by this kind of Lego building system.
And one of the great things about having a fully dynamic game engine is all of this just works. It's not, I'm not kidding. The generators will power things through switches that require power, lights and other items, and then you run wires that connect them all, and again, it just works.
If you have the materials and the devices in hand, after you've built it once, you will have that blueprint if you've saved it. So basically it's like a garage of your creations. It's a, history log of all of your different creations, and you can just select one and basically build it straight away, so you don't have to fiddle about with, creating it all over again. With this game, you will be fiddling about in menus a lot. This does feel, like I said, like a sandbox game more than a traditional Zelda game, and a lot of people will find that annoying because some people felt that Breath of the Wild was too much of a creative sandbox and not a traditional Zelda game where it focuses on dungeon and storytelling and all that kind of stuff. And I have to agree to a certain point, but I prefer this type of game more. But this just doubles down on the sandbox 10 times over, so some people might find that annoying. I truly hope you are enjoying this review of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. I do a lot of research so I can get the best information and what I can actually tell you with my hands-on experience, and interviewing a whole bunch of creators and developers and stuff like that so I can give you the best information. The reason I do my early reviews is because, like I said, the gaming industry has become very corrupt now, and I think it's very important that we do deep dives into games beforehand, because how the gaming industry works now with pre-orders, so many developers can basically get away with stealing and basically just lying to the gamers, and consumers just look at Redfall. So it's important to do these deep dives beforehand, and that is why I review them early. So I would not class my reviews as previews, I do count them as early reviews because I do a much more deeper analytical dive in them, but I think that's necessary now because we just can't trust the state of games releasing anymore, so I hope you do understand that. Tears of the Kingdom is going to be $70, which is pretty insane because the reason they've upped the prices for many games is because of next gen apparently using more complicated and more graphical power and all of this BS, but this is basically the same as Breath of the Wild, so I think it is a bit of a cheeky move, but this game is one of the best. So now you have this thing called a travel medallion, which basically means you can put down a respawn point like you're a goddamn sniper in Call of Duty, and basically you can just travel to that location whenever you feel like it. I think this is a quality of life improvement because if you found a cool challenge that you're not ready to engage with yet, or a cool location that isn't next to somewhere that you can just fast travel to, this means you can just have easier access to go to that location or fight a certain enemy or a boss. This is quality content. Quality content with your boy. Anyway, another thing that they've added is variation, which is it's very much needed because Breath of the Wild did get very boring after a while with its shrines and just collecting Korak seeds and stuff like that. Like I said, they've added many more challenges to engage with, but the variations of the puzzles from the, open world to the Sky Islands, basically they've just added a whole bunch of variations, basically in the way that you gather and collect new abilities and the Zonai devices to unlock certain new ways to build something. it's just way more varied, but don't expect, you know, like every single puzzle or every new dungeon location is going to be completely different. Another quality of life is of course for improved combat, and that also goes into the negatives because yes, it is improved with the added ability of fuse, but I do feel there is a strong negative now, which I'm going to talk about. But yes, it is just far better. There are new weapons, of course, so there's just greater variation, and especially because you can create whatever the hell you want. I'm disabled. But another thing that they've added is portable cooking, which is pretty cool. Just another little thing that makes traveling this world easier, and I'm not so sure about that because yes, this game is harder because they had to balance it out, but for what made Breath of the Wild also so engaging was the difficulty. This felt like a game not just for kids, you know, this was a game that actually respected you, and the difficulty, in some ways it almost felt like Dark Souls. Obviously not, but you know, it was difficult and it was sometimes brutally challenging depending on how much of a challenge you wanted, because you could basically go and play it safe and just gather up a bunch of extra health or extra stamina, or you could be a badass and just try and fight the world on your own terms. But the difficulty curve has been changed, and stuff like this do add, you know, just more ease of use. When you can just travel about and you want to cook something, now you can. It is a one-use item, which is better, but still there are quality of life improvements that make it easier and just more convenient. And the final positives is of course they've added a whole bunch of new bosses, which are just even more crazier in design and scale, and enemies will also be able to use these devices to create mechas and stuff like that, and new vehicles, so that just adds a whole new layer of combat. And the other thing that they've improved upon, which was already great in the base game, the elements are the same in how they work, but pretty much they've just added a whole bunch of new physics when it comes to flight and the Sky Islands, how these machines actually navigate. It's all based around physics, which is just so great. I love physics-based games because I'm a huge nerd and I just love it when I can push something and it actually reacts to my character. Okay, cool. The soundtrack is just so calming and chill and sometimes heroic, and it's just so atmospheric. And of course they've done an amazing job with the soundtrack yet again. They've added new tracks, that classic Nintendo soundtrack, which is just always superb. So now finally my negatives for this Zelda Tears of the Kingdom review. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you want to leave now, that's fine, but I think it is important to hear out the negatives in any game, because it's always important never to have too much hype for something, especially now. You know, don't have expectations, and then you will go into this with don't have high expectations and you will never be disappointed, as a great man once said. And if you go in with that attitude, you will find this game even more enjoyable. But if you go into this game expecting it to revolutionize gaming, then you will be disappointed, because I do feel strongly that this is almost a massive DLC onto Zelda Breath of the Wild. The animations, the assets, everything about Breath of the Wild is the same as Breath of the Wild. They are using exactly the same things, and of course you wouldn't expect them to change everything. That's unrealistic, you know, that would take too much time. But just smaller things like weapon animations and weapon movesets, like Elden Ring adapted from Dark Souls, and it created a whole wide ocean of movesets and weapons. Zelda Breath of the Wild reuses so much of the same animations, so much of the same assets, that it does at times feel like a DLC. Another big negative is there are FPS drops quite a lot of the time, because there are so many things happening now, and basically you can create whatever you want, which means you will put stress on the engine, and the Nintendo Switch isn't that powerful as it is, so there are more FPS drops than there were in the original base game. I hope that gets patched out, but as it stands with the hands-on stuff, there are lots of FPS drops, and if it is unstable on launch, then I think this will be a disaster in many ways. Another negative is the graphics and art style. The art style was already superb in Breath of the Wild, But I just think they could have made this feel more different, more unique if they just went with a new art direction. You know, if it was the same exact game, the same graphics, but perhaps they added a filter of Borderlands shaded art style on top of the game, or just added stronger line definition or something like that, just to make it pop a little bit more, to make it look a little bit different from the original, perhaps rework some of the lighting or shadows, stuff like that. They could have added just a few little differences to make it feel more unique, but it is exactly the same as Breath of the Wild. But they still haven't added the traditional dungeons, which is a shame. Also, the AI, although it's amazing, just like it was in the first game, they haven't improved on the AI, I feel. And at the end of the day, you are experiencing a lot of the same location, hence why it does feel like a massive DLC in some regards. Of course, they've changed things around and they've added whole new areas like the Sky Islands, but just bear that in mind, this isn't a completely revolutionary new game. This doesn't feel like Breath of the Wild 2, it almost feels like a Zelda Breath of the Wild 1.5, and I just think they could have done a little bit more to make it completely different, perhaps, you know, waited a little bit longer and release it on new hardware. So that concludes my Zelda Tears of the Kingdom game review. I truly hope you enjoyed this video. Like I said, whoa, ooh, the Triangle of Truth. Oh, the Triangle of Truth is coming to me. Zelda Triangle of Truth is slowly driving me insane, and I've been rambling on for 2 hours, but it won't seem like that for you. I do hope you enjoyed my review of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Like I said, if you did, please subscribe, it would mean a great deal to me. And I will see you in the next video. Have a great day, stay blessed, and peace out. And the final shill point, as I'm not sponsored, so I'm just going to quickly shill, check out my music on Spotify. I make electronic synth music, so yeah, it's really good, I think, personally, and I think you will actually like it if you give it a chance. Go to my Spotify, there is a link on my channel page, and I'll leave it in the comments as well.